Hi, everybody, and welcome to RHAP's coverage of Australian Survivor Redemption. My name is Mike Bloom. Do not adjust your dial. I'm officially sitting in the host's seat as I am so excitedly happy to announce the birth of Rory Taylor. Gus,
Whoop. Oh,
Shannon
whoop.
had her baby. They are all doing incredibly well. I will get into that in just a little bit. But first, let me bring in my guest here because over the course of, the rest of this season, with me ascending from to the throne from being a recap uncle, I decided to bring in some illustrious guests from our Australian Survivor alumni community to chat with me about all things redemption. And here is somebody who, look, this episode was all about the allies of one Mark Warnock, disposing of them, bringing them in line. And this guy, I would argue, was the first. He did it before any of these Baron people got into his inner circle. It is the one and the only from Titans versus Rebels, Eden Porter.
Oh, what an introduction there, my friend. Thank you so much for having me, Mike. I'm slowly ticking off my RHAP Holy Trinity podcasting. I've done Shannon. I'm living the dream right now, and then I've just got the big Rob C to go. So this is you're helping my dreams come true as well, Mike. This is big for me, my friend.
Oh my God. Well, hopefully that will not turn to a nightmare very quickly for you. Hopefully, the surreality can, hopefully the reality compares. But I want to get back to this cutie for a second. I just want to introduce you first, Eden, because, for those who do not know, Shannon has given birth to her first child with her incredible husband, Peter Guss. I will again say, everyone's doing well. I've been talking with Shannon throughout many sleepless nights. Now she finally feels Lyndall's experience. She has her own version of an Eliza waking her up. But she's dealing with maybe a little less paranoid, but she is in incredibly good spirits. I know Eden and I are both parents in our own right. We can speak for volumes about how much being a parent truly changes you in so many ways. And especially given for those of you who have followed Shannon and Peter's journey to parenthood for the past couple of years, you know how this has been an incredible journey of ups and downs that have showcased just the absolute mental and physical fortitude that both of them possess. And I'm just over the moon that now she is in their life. She is in all of our lives. So I really encourage anyone and everyone out there, find at Shannon Gates on any social media platform you can, and please wish her the best. This is someone who has talked so much about how supported she feels by those who are in the Australian Survivor trenches alongside her. And this woman was podcasting about this show less than 24 hours after giving birth to Rory. So you owe her that much. She is dedicated. And so you have to be dedicated to go find her and let her know the well wishes for this incredible bundle of joy.
It's so amazing, and I'm so happy for Shannon Peter, and this is amazing. So it was my birthday very recently, and I got a birthday message from Shannon, a very lovely birthday message, and then I realized, I'm like, hang on, aren't you like giving birth very soon? She's like, oh yeah, I've already done that, but I just wanted to wish you happy birthday as well. Which is just amazing. Like she's on top of everything. She's a million miles an hour, and now she's got this bundle of joy. I just can't wait to hear some stories and to swap stories. Like I'm saying, I've given her, I take some advice to her on the parenting guidelines, the Eden Porter style. But they're both going to be such incredible parents. I can already see it now. It's going to be wonderful to see that journey for them as well.
Totally agree. Well, let's go from swapping stories to the last pre-swap episode of this season here. Let's get into this because, that's incredibly good news about Rory. The bad news is y'all are stuck with me for the rest of the season. I'm officially taking this train over, Eden. And let's get into your thoughts on Australian Survivor Redemption. Obviously, we are going to talk about things from a very Mark-centered perspective, given your personal experience with him. But on the whole, we're a quarter of the way through the season. It's always weird with Australian Survivor with this 3-episode-a-week structure that it goes by like this. Quick, we have officially gotten through the first, I would say, phase of it. We're going to swap next week. So what have your thoughts been about Australian Survivor Redemption so far, especially considering, the at least the massive vote we had last episode?
Oh, mate. So I'm really liking the characters this season. I'm finding I'm connecting with a lot of people, and I'm feeling that the returnees are elevating everyone's experience out there. I think they've done a great job. I think these returnees are a really good cross section of the show itself, and they've made some connections, and they're really sort of teaching these newbies how to sort of play at a faster pace. Because honestly, these first couple episodes can just go by, and it can be really easy to fall into we'll just get rid of Blanche, we'll just get rid of these people that are not connecting, your Dons and things like that. But everyone is playing at such a high level. Everyone is really intrigued, and everyone's double thinking, triple thinking, what can we do in these situations? So I'm really enjoying it. And some people are popping up the screen. Look, unfortunately, it's Australian Survivor, so there's going to be some purple edits. There's going to be, I think this is Tez's first confessional. Blanche, I haven't even seen Blanche at all, so I don't know what Blanche is doing. But I think they've done a slightly better job this time of connecting more of the dots. Like there's a little bit of everyone. I don't know. You think back to BVB2, basically the Brawn tribe was purpled completely.
Yeah.
So we're not at that stage. But yeah, I'm finding it really fun. And look, this is gonna sound terrible, but JLP was fantastic. He was great, but I do feel like we're in the Golden God Dave era now, and it has just now. What are we 6 episodes in?
Yeah,
it's there. It's happening. He's doing a great job. He's really starting to like relax into the role a bit more, I feel, and that I'm really enjoying that. So it's like someone else's sort of take on that hosting role as well, which I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah, and I think it's also a matter of sort of watching through real time him get adjusted to it. It's almost akin to the parallel path of the players themselves, getting used to the elements and the hyper strategic elements. You also have David maybe shaking off a bit of that JLP facsimile dust that he had in those first couple of episodes. So I think settle into his own tone. I agree with you. I've been having a lot of fun with Australian Survivor Redemption so far. And I think there's also these expectations, right, of like, okay, it's going to be a returning heavy season in terms of content, in terms of strategy. And look, absolutely gutted to lose Harry in the last episode. But it does serve as a larger symbol of like how much these newbies are here to play and are here to pop on the screen. We even get it in a sort of form in this episode, with obviously the Faith and the Keeley of it all doing the work behind the scenes, apparently to try to undermine Mark here. Like it is very clear. I compared it to, US's Edge of Extinction before the season. And I feel like that's bearing out more and more of like, okay, this is not necessarily going to be okay, vets are just going to steamroll the entire newbies, make up the final 4. Like these people are here to play. And what's so interesting, Eden, from my perspective, from what I've seen of the season so far, is that this is a cast that kind of does like, I would almost say, to use an improv term, like an A to C level of thinking, where there's no sense of an easy vote. Like a name will be presented to them, and then they'll say, okay, that's great. But what about this person? What if we tried this person? And I feel like almost every episode we've gotten some sort of version of that, of, okay, this name is brought up. We could go with that name, but I want to go with this name instead. And the vast majority of the time, that is what has resulted. This might be the exception, though. You and I talked before coming on here. I see it's already been reflected in sort of the talk about it from fans post-episode. This was a weird edit. We got a lot of, again, that similar type of fracas of, okay, it's going to be Johnson or it's going to be Don. But what if it was Caleb? And certainly with him coming into the episode, you wondered if it was going to be a progenitor of him going down in flames, Icarus style, flying too close to the sun, only for the sun to like very easily set and the moon to come out and Johnson get voted off. So what were your sort of thoughts about this episode in particular? Do you feel like it was true to life where the Caleb vote was really gathering steam and then something happened to stop it in its tracks? Or was this more so, okay, we've got like an hour plus episode here. Let's just fill it out of, maybe it's be Caleb, rather than it was going to be Johnson pretty much from like the second Cat left the game until now.
Yeah, look, I think Australian Survivor sometimes when the votes are really straightforward. And look, my season we had a couple of straightforward votes, like the Nathan vote. Everyone was on board. We're like, this is cool. And you see the edit, and then suddenly it's, oh, hang on, what else is happening? There's a few other things there, and it sort of filtered into the episode to make it more interesting. Obviously, at the end of the day, but this, I do think there was a Caleb push. I think there was this undercurrent, and obviously there is a scene that we didn't see where my assumption is that Brooke really pushed back on the girls and said, I want to work with you guys. Let's not do this yet. And just talk some sense into, like, yes, the swap's coming up and this is happening. But the other thing that sometimes happens is also when you haven't gone to tribal council for a while and everyone just has the person that, yeah, it's going to be Don. It's got to be Don. Don't worry, it's going to be Don. The more you sit on that for days and days and days, the less appealing it becomes. And I think that's when people start thinking like, well, hang on, it's been 5-6 days now and everyone's like, it's going to be Don, it's going to be Don. Everyone assumes it. So maybe this is the time to do something different. Whereas if they'd gone to tribal council straight away, yeah, look, maybe Mark hadn't pulled in Don yet. Maybe they do just get rid of him. But it's the sitting on it and the thinking, and because you're all still thinking game the whole time. You're never going, oh great, we don't have to go to council. Let's not talk about it. It's, yeah, this is happening, and what if, and what if, and what if. So I think the girls did want to get on board and actually do something about it. The other thing that I found really interesting this episode comes back to the point before when we were talking about the returnees really influencing these newbies. Because what I saw here 100% is Mark knows how to play the game. Mark knows how to do the scoop. He knows to talk to Don, to be nice to him. He knows what Tez needs. He knows these little connections to make. And I think we saw in real time, Faith and Keely seeing him do that and go, oh, this is how you should play Survivor. Okay, now let's do it. Who can we do it with? Oh, we can do it with Sally and Ben. And they are learning directly from these returnees and going, okay, this is how we play Survivor. Whether Mark and Brooke aren't there, are Faith and Keely that switched on to being like, hang on, I need to pull these bottom guys out that are sort of left. Maybe they just consolidate themselves. So I think that's a really interesting point. And then using that against Mark to go like, okay, well, we're going to scoop up people now, and now we're going to take out the people that you're connected with. I just think this really elevates for newbies. This is some great play. This is some really high level understanding of what's going on in the tribe dynamics. And I think that's because you've got these veteran players there and you're learning off them. Like Mark's not telling them, hey guys, you need to do this. They're just observing it and going like, oh, this is how we should be playing. So it's great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that is a core tenet of just Survivor in general. And it's one of my favorite, albeit sometimes frustrating things about the show as a concept, which is the players are the ones who dictate the pace of the game. You can throw in as many advantages and swaps and surprise tribal councils as you want to. It is up to the players each and every season to essentially dictate, like, what are the 10 commandments of each season. And so from that perspective, yes, sometimes when you have these returnees come in and be like, Mark gets up at the first tribal council he goes to and starts pulling Keely aside and whispering things, it does kind of give some players the license to be like, okay, we're doing this. Yeah, I guess this is what we want to do, which again is incredible from an entertainment perspective. But of course, we are talking about Mark, and I'd be remiss not to get your thoughts on it because listen, you are a ghost, my friend. I know with the people that were chosen in these shots, but in my opinion, you were the one that was more so weighing on Mark's heart than, like, with no offense to Valeria, the woman who was taken out by one vote by a man who had an advantage and pretended he was depressed to earn every single vote. So give me your thoughts on this. Have you liked so far Mark's style, or at least the narrative he's been presenting of like, I have to simultaneously A, be more devious, but B, also be more ride or die for my people?
Yeah, I'm loving the Mark narrative. And look, we're having a V's mention. We had a Ferris, the Ferris mention. Fingers crossed, Mike. Fingers crossed. Another Titan's going to get a call out.
I mean, listen, you could be the Tez 1.0, depending on how this goes with the two of them.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Tez will love that. Tez will be in the comments. He'll be all over that. But no, I really like, first of all, redemption. look, we know Australian Survivor loves its themes, and some of them are tenuous at best. I'm not sure whether you heard that Caleb's a truck driver and he needs redemption from this. But
in retrospect, I do not know how that man stays behind the seat of any moving vehicle for hours at a time. He seems like he is just raring to reach for something or go somewhere like within minutes of sitting down. So maybe he just has a remarkable amount of patience, or maybe it's like he's been so patient that like now it's just all kind of coming out in fits and starts.
It's building up. Exactly. So I think with Mark, his redemption, look, he could have gone with the I came third. This is like I nearly won. I just need to win that thing. But that's Harry's story. That's Harry's so close, just need to do it. And so I'm really glad that they've pivoted to this more, I think, more interesting idea that like Mark let his allies down and these people fell away as he came through, and now he wants to try and redeem them and get back in the good graces of the Survivor gods. I think that's really interesting, and I love that he's playing into it. I feel like Mark is a lot more comfortable and confident this time round. I think he came third. He won a car last time. So he's ticked off a lot of
Caleb.
things. Yeah, exactly. He's done a lot of things in his bucket list. So I think this has freed him up to play a more, in his mind, a more fun game, a more engaging, an interesting sort of game. His confessionals are fantastic. He knows what's pops, and he's laying sort of these breadcrumbs of what he wants to do, and his understanding of the tribe dynamic is fantastic. The funny thing is he has put himself out there as a huge target, and you can really go one or two ways as a returner. You can go, yep, look, this is me. Use me as a shield. I'm a really big target. Or you can try and, oh yeah, you can learn off me, guys. You got to keep me around. I can sort of show you the ways. I really like that Mark has just made that decision straight up to be like, yep, we're going to play the shield game. People are going to want to keep me around because I'm going to distract, and we're going to fall back into the habit. And you know what? Crazily enough, there is a Survivor sort of concept that you take on the traits of the winner of your original season.
Right.
So when you come back, you bring a bit of that with it. And is this a bit of Ferris? Be a big target. Find someone else. Have this shield on shield protection with Ferris and Kirby. And is he trying to build something like that with a Faith? The one thing is, Faith and Keely are very connected. And so this could be his ultimate undoing if they can pull the trigger on something later. He doesn't have that other person sort of really have his back. Luckily enough, in this episode, it does seem that Brooke was that person that did bring him that information. Whereas on Titans versus Rebels, when things started to go sideways, when we put forward the idea of getting rid of Viola, and then ultimately when Valeria went as well, Mark didn't have that extra person there getting the information, going like, oh, I'm gonna tell Mark about this. Things are happening. He was sort of isolated. So this time he's gone out of his way to have more connections, to have people out there feeding him more information and being that sort of central point. I'm not sure how much he loves having another mafia-themed alliance out there.
Nowhere to go but up from those mafia-named alliances.
He did not jump on the corn chip mafia. It became the corn chip cartel very quickly as well. I just love the fact that that's following that. That's another ghost of Survivor past hoarding Mark, I think. But that in itself, I think he's creating these connections with people. Although, did you find it weird as well that they sort of said, oh yeah, Tez is 100% on board with Mark? I think we've seen one conversation between them the whole time that was conveniently put just before that conversation with the girls. They're like, oh yeah, Mark also speaks to Tez all the time and he's on board. So yeah, it's interesting, but I'm really liking his play now. And the other thing, I'm just gonna rant in, Mike, sorry. Mark putting himself in the hero position time and time again on the challenges. It's a decision that he's made, saying, I want to control my fate in the game. I want to be the one that takes the ball and runs with it, so to speak. And it keeps coming through. He keeps winning these hero moments, which is absolutely fantastic. To the chagrin of Don, I might say, who's apparently done everything. He goes, I use carabiners every day of my life. I just throw things.
I'm here for Debbie Donner, Donnie Wanner, whatever you want to say. The idea that Don has now, I would say, like almost 3 or 4 challenges in a row, just had some sort of snide comment on the sideline being like, or not even on the sideline, during that the slingshot challenge, he's like outright asking Mark right before things are about to start, like, hey, can we swap out? right now?
Yeah,
Like,
can
God,
we
I
go,
don't understand how that works. Like, we're about to, Dave's about to raise his or put his hand down. Like,
so funny.
the ship has sailed, my friend. It's so fun. I love this idea that like Don is just this consistent smokescreen. How he is simultaneously both completely aware and unaware of his mission. But you
Oh,
mentioned as well, like one of the reasons why Faith and Keely try to make this move is because Mark sort of has some of these
mm,
fallback options where it's like he won't feel as alone if he has a Caleb and a Don alongside him. I mean, listen, I would also imagine part of it is the fact that Tribe Swap has been on the minds and the lips of
yeah,
basically all of these players at this
yeah,
point. And so you want to go in with not even a sense of solidarity, but just as many options as possible to
mm,
make sure that you don't necessarily get sold down the river. And so you talk about Mark putting himself in that hero position. Let's talk about the man. He was ironically enough sort of navigating that vertical maze alongside, but it was very applicable to their dynamic at long last. Now you talk about the fact that names get sort of flitted about the more you sit on your hands before tribal council. But this was a guy who Mark had called his shot on even before the cat vote happened, before he made that sort of 11th hour push. And at long last, Johnson is out of here. We're going from Temu Habibi, from the BB legend himself. I want to get your thoughts about Johnson here, Eden, because again, from our perspective, the edit makes it seem like, okay, it's going to be Faith, Keely, Sally, Johnson,
mm,
and Ben. And Johnson is just completely skeeved out, it seems, by all
yeah,
the stuff the girls are doing. Now, part of this might be that he has this, pristine image in his mind, right? Of like, me and Mark are going to be like, ironically enough, David and Matt Rogers and All Stars. We're going to be
yeah.
secret enemies, but, secret lovers as well. We're protecting each other. So, do you think it was that idea in Johnson's head that made him ultimately decline going for Caleb? Or do you think there was just more so a paranoia around something else being afoot that made him ultimately not go through with the plan?
Yeah, 100%. It's really hard to just blindly just go with something when someone who hasn't put in the time to build a relationship with you just comes up to you and says, "This is happening tonight. This is like get on board." And Johnson, he is a game player. He's got through Big Brother. He's navigated that. He understands the game. He's not someone that's just going to blindly go, "Okay, that's what we're doing. Fine. I won't try anything and I'll just do it." And it's interesting as well when you 100% know that you're dead to rights and you're the next person. That's the situation where someone comes to you and goes, "We can actually do this tonight." That's a lot more believable and a lot more like, okay, well, I know I'm next. So yeah, look, I'll just go with that. That's fine. Where in this situation, I feel like Johnson thought he still had options. He thought there were still pathways for him to navigate. And as a result, he pushed back a little bit on this. I thought the handling of Faith's conversation with Johnson
Oh,
wasn't great. I
no,
think
my
it was
God. Well, where did this come from, Eden? Like,
in terms of her edit, this was totally out of left field. Someone said, like, if you screw this up for me, I will burn you down. I will make it my mission to destroy you. It was fire and brimstone. It was salting the earth so nothing could grow again. It
yeah.
was absolutely. It was so out of left field for her, which was strange. Look, I
Yeah.
understand when you're in the scramble, right? When you go off and talk to someone, it's very obvious and you can really see people talking, and if they're talking for longer than you think, then people start thinking. So in Keely and Faith's mind, the more conversations they have, the more radars go up with someone like Mark going, "Hang on, why are those guys having another chat?" So I understand that, but to talk to someone the way that she did, like Johnson, when you're trying to get him to get on board,
Yeah, when you
it
start a conversation about being like, we shouldn't be having this conversation. This could have been a tree mail.
yeah, it was just really like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. And then Johnson, he's looking for some confirmation, but you're going to someone telling him to vote out a person that he doesn't really want to vote out. He actually probably wants to work with Caleb. He wants to. There was a great alliance that got mentioned offhand that I don't think formulated, but it was Johnson and Friends. I think
Yes.
is yeah. Like I'm surprised that didn't get any more traction, but I thought that was really fun. But he he wants to get brought into this, and he has that little bit of paranoia. He doesn't want to betray Mark. He thinks that he is building something with Mark and that this will totally undercut him, and this will paint him as a huge snake, as a huge backstabber, and it will be very, very hard for him to get back on anyone's good graces at this point. That's what he's sort of thinking. And Mark comes around to that thinking as well when he goes, by the end of the episode, he goes, I think Johnson actually does really want to work with me. And it was sort of like a light bulb moment where at the start he's like, oh, he's just talking. He's just that's all he does. He talks. By the end, he's going, I think he actually does. But when Mark makes his mind up about something, talking is never going to change it. You need actions. You need to prove yourself with a vote. You need to try and move forward. And it is very hard to build that back up at this point in the game for him. But look, I do feel sorry for him. But why are they? We're going to call them this minority sort of group. Why do they keep targeting internally? Like Johnson going after Don and stuff. No, he should be using these guys to go after people that he's not like a Faith or a Keely or these other people. He should be looking at Ben and Sally and Tez and Blanche and saying, hang on, if we all get together, we've nearly got control of this tribe. Don, do you want to do something here, man? This is huge. We could do this. But he got so focused on internally targeting each other and letting Faith, the Keelys, the Marks, the Brooks really dictate from like there's only 4 of them. You guys could get together and create something, but he just couldn't get it off the ground.
Yeah, so there's a few thoughts about that because if I recall correctly, we actually did see a glimpse of this. Now, granted, this was episode like 3 or 4, so this was in the long respite between tribal councils, but I'm remembering like Johnson trying to do something with like Ben, Sally, Dawn, Caleb, trying to turn things against Mark. But I think you bring up a really good point that reflects both his own perspective as well as the perspective of others towards Johnson, which is we have to remember, again, it was a while ago at this point, but what happened at that last Barrier Tribal Council where Kat, talk about scorching the earth before her own game and Johnson's, completely laid out everything he was doing. And the fact that he was making all these deals, the fact that he was throwing people like Tez and Keely under the bus, saying they were not playing the game and he wanted to get rid of them. I think Johnson probably was still operating probably under this paranoid perception of himself of like, well, people think I'm just this snaky guy. I don't want to do the underhanded snaky thing and continue to prove their point. I'm ready to rebuild. I'm ready to start over. I've got something good going with Mark, or so he thinks. Let me stick with that path. And so as a result, he decides to stick with what he believes is the plan. And yeah, there is also something probably odd from his perspective. And, you know, we'll get the chance to talk with him very soon. So I'm sure he'll talk more about this, about the fact that if it does seem like Mark and Faith and Keely are so entrenched to the point where, again, Mark pulls Keely specifically aside at Tribal Council to be like, hey, we're going to do this thing now. From an optics perspective, yeah, maybe there is something to if they come to him and be like, we're doing this plan, and also very specifically, Mark is not involved, it sends your radar up a bit. It also seems like at Tribal Council, he was, you know, had his ears perked up when Keely was trying to do her own sort of vague answer of like, well, the vote tonight will be, entrenched within the person that I promised my loyalty to. So I think that Survivor exists in a lot of confirmation bias. Certainly we were seeing that with Lyndall to a certain extent of like, I believe this thing about myself, and I'm only really listening for things that confirm that rather than, 100%. Substitute my own reality for something else. And so that did feel like a bit of a slow rolling thing for Johnson, where despite being presented from our perspective, this golden opportunity to save himself and flip things, there were just too many things in his head that were making him feel like this does not feel like the right thing to do.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting, like we have Tez, and I wanted to bring this up as well. Like Tez is the classic person that seems to have been swallowed up by the returnee edit. Like we're not getting a lot from him. Like Johnson's obviously he's a big player and he's having conversations. Tez has been pretty much non-existent. But we see a little moment here of Tez working with Mark. And then we see Sally tell Tez, hey, this is the plan tonight. We're going to get another number on board. And then I don't think Sally told Tez that Mark doesn't know.
Yeah, because you would see Tez is hedging his bets, to say the least, where he's like, I've heard a name. I won't say the name, nor will I say who said the name. All I could say is that my name is Tez. That's the only name I'm
Yes.
going to float out to you right now.
And you could see in real time the panic setting in with Tez, because he realized very quickly that Mark was like, "Hang on, what are you talking about? What do you mean there's another plan?" And then Tez was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'm not going to say it now out loud." And Tez needs to make a decision on what he wants to do and who he wants to be with, because that was not a great conversation with Mark, and it was put him in a really awkward position. And yeah, and ultimately, because Tez did vote for Don in the end,
Yes,
didn't he?
but he also had this voting confessional that was like, "I'm not a sheep."
What a sheep.
So, which is weird because again, he has this confessional about how he feels he's like fanboying essentially over this idea of working with Mark, only for him at the end to be seemingly so insubordinate, right? Like, I guess he is brought
Yeah.
in on the Johnson conversation that him and Mark and Ben were having. So maybe that was the plan. He was told maybe Mark still wanted to keep Tez at arm's length and be like, I'm not going to involve you in the main thing, just in case
Yeah.
the quote unquote weasel leaks this information back to Johnson. But it was a weird thing to say, considering that the only thing we've seen, sadly, of this man so far is like how excited he is to play with someone like Mark.
Yes, exactly. Which it's so interesting. And then to do such a weird backflip in this situation. And then obviously he felt that everyone was on Don and that no one corrected him and that no one brought him back on board. And it's just ultimately, yeah, he needs to decide who his allies are actually with. I think him and Blanche are definitely getting swallowed up by this bigger narrative across the board. And Don gets through again. And is he gonna be the person that is always the backup? He's always like, "Oh, we'll always put some votes on Don. It's okay." Because there is one thing, like Don mentions that he's okay to get votes on him. Like he's okay. And I'm just banging on the TV. I'm like, "Don, if you know 2 votes are coming your way, you've got to get 2 other votes on someone else." Like
But
it's
his
not.
big planning was that he was going to have Brooke use the idol on him. You don't understand this man's mind.
I I know, it's crazy, but it's just things like that where you should never be happy being the split. That should just never cross your mind in terms of that. And it's perfectly within reason to be like, okay, great, now we just need to put 2 votes on someone else just to save my bacon, and they just don't do it. It's so wild to me to see
Yeah,
it
well,
like
I
that.
think that I could see a world where Don actually does get voted out in a post-swap mentality, where if he's swapped into a minority
Mm,
and he's not necessarily with people that would vouch for him, aka Mark and Caleb, I
yeah,
think like if he swapped over with like Faith and Keely, they could very easily be like, listen, as long as it's not me, bye Don,
100%.
take him out. He's annoying. You should hear all the comments he makes in challenges. If you do anything, he'll let you know that he was the one that should have done it. So I still don't think Don's necessarily out of the woods, especially because he's accumulated
Mm,
like 6 votes so far out of 2
it's
tribal
crazy.
councils that he's gone to. But let's get to Eden, this plan that has seemingly been worked up until the 11th hour when it ends up, getting waylaid in favor of an easy Johnson vote.
Mm.
Question is, Eden, should it have happened at all? What did you make of the decision of Faith and Keely and eventually Sally to make this move against Caleb? Did you feel like it was something that was ever going to get over the line?
I honestly, I actually think it is quite a good move from Faith and Keely. I actually think it's within their best interests that they keep Mark on board, and that they've got rid of someone that they feel is loose lips. Like from what we've seen of Caleb, he goes nuts. He's screaming at the top of his lungs, like, "Oh, we got to get rid of all the returnees. Yeah, we got rid of the," and then the next morning realizing, "Oh crap, I've got 2 returnees on my tribe as well that
I
I'm meant
love
to be
that him
working with."
trying to save face the next day, be like, no, I meant big player, not
Yeah,
necessarily returning.
When I said returnee, I meant yeah. So that I can understand why that's sort of rubbing them the wrong way, but this is a terrible plan for Brooke. Brooke feels like she has a little bit of a connection with him. She knows she's hyper aware of the swap coming up, and she goes, "Okay, I just need all my ducks in a row. I need everyone being able on the same page talking to me. I'm Caleb. I feel like I'm getting on with him." So for Brooke to push back, the thing with Faith and Keely, I don't think they needed to bring Brooke in. I think this was a situation where they go, you know what? we're keeping this tight. We're just getting the numbers that we need. We're not involving anyone else. And let's just no one else talk and let's just do it. But they obviously are not reading Brooke's relationship with Mark and understanding that there's an onion alliance here, that there's layers to this, and that this is another whole level to this. That Brooke ultimately, I don't think she told. Well, we don't know, but I don't think she went back to Mark being like, hey, this is exactly what's happening. But I think she pushed back enough to go, no, let's keep everyone on the same page. Like getting rid of Johnson, everyone that's going to be fine when we come back to camp. And that means we're going to be tight coming into the swap. And so I think on a bigger scale, going into a swap with it's like it wasn't unanimous at the end of the day, but I don't think your Tezes and your Blanches are going to push back on Johnson, like going home and feeling like, oh, look, I'm totally out. I'm looking for a new home here, because Mark's got to really tap back into them and say, hey, mate, let's keep this together. Let's keep this relationship working ultimately at the end of the day.
Yeah, so I have so many thoughts on this because the concept, I think, does make sense. As much as I sort of, for lack of a better term, blanch at the idea of, okay, we're going to cut this person off at the knees by taking out their number one ally. We just saw it happen with Paula and Harry. Like, the vast majority of the time, it doesn't work. Luckily, they didn't take the half measure, on Bounty, though. Again, we don't know if maybe Lyndall would have gone instead of Harry were it not for that individual immunity challenge.
Yeah.
So, at least it's an interesting idea, especially if they are an ally of Mark. I mean, this was the classic Kirby move, right? Of like, okay, well, I want to get close to this person, so let me take out their number one ally, and somehow it worked. So I appreciate the fact that they are actively gaming to ensure, like, not only is their position in the game maintained, if not better, but their relationship with Mark feels more exclusive. I do think there were a couple of errors here. The first is, I don't know about the choice of target. I think that Caleb does make sense if you're trying to create this unifying narrative of he's too much of a loose cannon. Do we really want this guy at the swap? Again, something that Harry was low-key espousing to Bounty. But it feels like Caleb had too many people in his corner to whip the votes together, right? Obviously, Mark's not going to vote him out. Don's not going to vote him out. Brooke seemingly was not going to vote him out. I honestly thought, given the pop in the edit we got earlier in this episode, that it would be Tez. And I thought Operation Get the Weasel was going to carry out. And I feel like Tez, or even a Blanche, maybe. I know Blanche is a big question mark, but I feel like from my sense of the dynamics, that would be a much easier name to float out, because I don't know how many people are vouching for Tez. Maybe Mark. But that's it. If this guy is apparently scurrying around talking to everybody, as it seems, that's a much easier name to sell someone like Johnson, maybe, to make him feel like, okay, maybe it's too big of a leap to go to someone like Caleb. Tez, listen, if he's with everyone, he's with no one. And that could be something that maybe Tez feels like he's not putting himself out on a limb to get rid of.
Yeah, I think it's 100% that we had this Operation Weasel thing come out of almost the blue, and it was sort of set up as like, this is happening, this is going to be the move. But what's interesting about sort of, I would actually go with Don is probably, if you
I was thinking that too, of like, if you're trying to break up this corn chip cartel. Don, just hop on Johnson with the Don vote.
Correct. And you know that Johnson is already feeling that. So then he's way more likely to be like, oh, great. Yep, that's what I want to do anyway. Let's do it. So you can guarantee that he's sort of pulled in that regard. What is like the Tez vote? It's funny when you have someone like that. Like, obviously Faith and Keely had a conversation about they wanted him out. But then when they brought in Sally, they floated both names, and I think it was Sally that actually then, that's a great move. You bring someone in, and you go, these are the two options. What do you think? You give them some ownership of the role. You're not telling them, you're not dictating what they need to do. So that was a great move from the girls. And then Sally was the one that actually said, Caleb, I think he would blow up everyone's games, and everyone went, okay, well, that's what we're doing. We're getting on board. And so I think for the girls to get Sally and Ben involved and making them feel like they've got a bit of ownership, that makes sense in that regard. But should they have maybe pushed it a bit more and gone like, oh, well, yeah, maybe Don and Tez are the two that are sort of the linchpins of Mark's relationships, and let's go for them. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think Caleb they probably didn't realize that Brooke felt like she had a relationship with him as well, which again puts another dampener on the plan. I think you probably could have gone with Don to break that up. Everyone would have got on board. Johnson, you could have locked in Johnson's vote in that regard. And I don't think Sally and Ben really mind either. So, yeah.
The other thing that I had a little bit of umbrage with is, and I understand that like they really wanted this to happen. And so as a result, they essentially go ally shopping where they tried on Johnson and it didn't necessarily take. And so then they go to Tez and then they go to Brooke. And I get it. Again, you want to amass these numbers, but if one of the other purposes of your plan is making sure it doesn't get out to the wrong people, in my opinion, that's the wrong thing to do. And
Correct.
again, I think they're lucky that Tez was not more specific for some reason with the names that were being mentioned, because this could very easily come back to them. And so it did feel like at certain points there was a little bit of desperation of like, all right, we have this grand plan in mind of the three of us, Johnson and Ben. Okay, Johnson's not taking. Okay, well then let's go to all of these other people and try it. And that sort of to me undermines, I think, the secrecy that could come with this. I mean, if you're looking at the dynamics here, if you feel like, okay, Mark, Don, and Caleb are locked in to vote Johnson, and Ben and Johnson are locked in to vote for Don, you could still take the plurality there. That's, 5 votes that are off the table. You could even have 6 and get the majority. But you really have to pick and choose who you're talking to, not only to bring them on board, but also to have them maintain the secrecy. So the more we're talking about this, the more that I do feel like maybe the move then was, okay, if Johnson's not going to do Caleb, it's not, oh, let's go to someone else and suggest Caleb. It's no, let's stick with Johnson and let's say, who do you want? That's another classic move. Hey, you're the swing vote. Who do you want to get out? We'll go with that, because the answer is probably going to be Don, and that is totally A-okay if that's your, ideal goal is to cut out one of Mark's allies.
And that's what they did. They just did it with Sally, and that's where the Caleb came from. And then maybe you need to reassess, and when you do it with someone else, and where are they going to point the finger at that point? But it's I think the girls, they tried really hard. They wanted to do something. They wanted to make it happen. But they just maybe went about it in the wrong direction, or didn't feel like they could pivot. And like, it's obviously they didn't respect Johnson in the game. They felt that he was on the bottom. So if you don't agree with it, tough luck. This is what's happening. And so, and then there is another thing about going into swap and having everyone get on board. Like, I do understand that the more people you get on board at this point, you go, look, we can sort of get enough people. If it's just Mark that doesn't know about it, then that doesn't leave, like, you're only pissing off one person at that point. And so I understand that, but I was a big component of, let's only tell who we need to get it across the line, lock it in and keep it tight. That's all you need to do. And that's, ultimately I think that would have worked better.
All right, well, let's get to tribal council here. And the moment that, in an episode that had everyone kind of quizzically crooking their heads, let's talk about a moment that has everyone brooking their heads here. Let's talk about this idol play, because yes, when first watching it, I was as WTF as everybody out here, where Brooke first pulls out the idol and is like, I could play this for anybody.
What?
And then she stands up and plays it for herself. But there is a very key detail that either we forgot about or something that the edit really glossed over, that Brooke has already taken to social media to clarify up and down, which is the fact that as this was a cross-tribal idol, this was something that could only be played at Barren Beach. And I'm pretty sure she clarified could only be played before a swap.
Yeah. That's what she said. So, which makes sense.
Which makes sense. And again, listen, you can't assume too many things in Survivor, but they were kind of assuming that there would be, especially with 6 players voted out, you have 18 left, perfect time to swap to 9 and 9 next time. But that seems like it was more so out of necessity. Now, look, there is certainly a world of, okay, do you hold on to it and try to use it as a fake? Sort of like
fake idol,
I mean, there's also the Lyndall facet of this as where Lyndall could basically, if they wind up on the same tribe or information gets out, Lyndall could essentially say, hey, by the way, this idol has no power anymore. But how does that recontextualization change your perspective on what Brooke did at Tribal Council?
I actually think it was the Lyndall having that knowledge that there's this other idol that's out there. Like, this is not a completely secret idol that you can use as a fake, that you could do something fun with, because you cannot trust Lyndall to keep her mouth shut. You don't know whether she's told everyone out there. And the worst thing you can do is then get caught out and be like, well, hang on, she's just told everyone that you've had this idol and everything like that. So you don't want to be suddenly trying to use it as a fake and then that already be sort of out there and exposed. I 100% the same as you. I was like, what is she doing? This is crazy. This is way too dramatic. And she did it with a bit of flair as well, to try and be like, well, what am I going to do with it? Ultimately, once we know that information, it's like, yeah, fine, just burn it. That's fine. It's out there. It's burnt. It's done. And now she sort of has the knowledge of Lyndall's idol, so she's got a bit of power to maybe then go, oh, you guys, Lyndall's actually got the other half of this. So like that could be interesting further down the line. But because I originally thought, I was like, wow, she is really pushing back on the Caleb thing. Like, that was my initial thought. I thought that she was trying to tell Faith and Keely in no unnecessary terms that if you guys are still thinking of going to Caleb, I'm going to play this for Caleb, and you're going to be stuck with whoever we want to go at. So don't do it. Ultimately, once we heard what actually happened, I don't think that is the case. I think there was another conversation that we didn't see between Brooke and the girls where she really pushed back and said, no, let's stay together for the merge. Let's sort of for the swap. Let's be all on the same page.
It's basically a merge at this point, because people were talking about, like, we've got to have strength in numbers solidarity.
Yeah.
Almost going back to Brooke's season when they, incidentally called the swap the merge. It kind of feels like it at this point, like a mini merge, essentially.
Yeah, it's and they're all hyper aware of it. I'd love there to not be a swap and just throw everything out the window.
I was wishing. I mean, listen, I like dynamics being shaken up, and we'll certainly get into like what's been set up on Bounty. But yeah, that would be, if we got a Jeff Probst S dropped your expectations in Heroes versus Villains, I would love that, especially considering that like both of these tribes kind of have hot mess dynamics going into whatever the situation is.
And that's what I do. I do hate that when there is good stuff bobbling under the surface. Like, are the girls going to take another shot at Mark? Is like, what's going to happen with Simon and Lottie? And it looks like these other guys are sort of splitting it down the middle. And then you get a swap and everything changes. I'm like, oh no, but it wasn't boring yet. There were still things happening. Like, I understand doing a swap when it's really pagonging and you're like, okay, these guys on the bottom, bang, bang, bang. But these guys are not doing that. It's really interesting and fun at the moment. And so, yeah, could you go in another couple of episodes without doing a swap? Maybe. But
Brooke would have liked that. That idol would have certainly had more power then.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens and who actually has the numbers beside them when they do go to eventually go to a swap, because there definitely is one.
Yeah, I think that now in retrospect, given this information, again, I'm not sure how much Brooke thought that the Caleb thing was going to happen. I do think she had a really interesting line at Tribal Council, and I'm not sure how couched in truth it was versus just theatrics of her being like, the way I'm used to playing, I don't necessarily do the last minute plan type of gameplay, which does give me a little bit of pause, considering that like that does feel like I would say a specifically like post All-Stars type of gameplay for Survivor AU, which is weird because you have more days certainly than something like the US version, but I think we see almost as much scrambling nowadays of like, nope, we're doing this now. And especially I would imagine from Brooke's perspective, again, they haven't gone to Tribal Council for what, like a week at this point. And so for her to sort of have this one reality of Johnson in her head, only to have probably get approached hours before the vote, if not minutes, and told about this, it could certainly put her head on a spin. So maybe she really did feel like, okay, if there is any sort of uncertainty here, let me strong arm things a little bit. Let me even just tease the idea that I could play this on Caleb. And there also is the idea, right, of, okay, and we see that people do this when they play their idols in general. Let me gauge everyone's reactions when I pull out this idol. And she was, right near Faith and Keely and Sally. If she just watches how they react, if they start whispering to one another, you play that thing on Caleb. If they are just sitting there like a bump on a log, all right, just play it on yourself, burn it away. Maybe get Lyndall under the bus by telling everyone when you get back to camp, like, by the way, this was the swap that happened. I'm surprised you didn't clock it. It was the least inconspicuous thing to ever happen in human existence, and then sort of move forward from there. So I definitely think, given more context, and I think trying to maybe assign some logic to it, the further I get away from it, the more I actually don't mind it verging on like actually kind of like what she did.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if Lyndall didn't know about it and that was completely secret and it was just something that she had, I think there's benefits for keeping it secret and using it as a fake, using it as a way to build a relationship with someone else. But because of that, that's out in the world. I'm totally fine with this.
All right, well, let us hop over to Bounty here because they enjoy a much needed respite from Tribal Council. We're officially living in a post Harry world, and there's still a lot of intrigue here. Starting with, and maybe this is a reason why Johnson's argument to Mark could work sometimes of like, it's good to have a common enemy to
Yes.
unify everyone together because Paula's gone and Harry's gone now. And now we see this seemingly incredibly tight trio of Lottie, Asha, and Cameron start to kind of fall apart at the seams due to what
Yeah.
happened in the previous episode. And we see both sides of this. We have Asha talking to Cameron about how she is peeved with how Lottie really did seem to go to bat for Harry, something she clearly didn't want to do. And look, Lottie did eventually
Mm.
make the move against Harry, but Asha didn't necessarily like how they got there. And then you have Lottie subsequently clocking that and going to Simon. And this is interesting because, in talking with Paula, which, the exit interviews will be coming out imminently, she had said that actually this dynamic was something that had existed prior to this
Mm.
moment, that she outlined that the tribe from her perspective was pretty much two sides of like Harry and Paula versus Simon and Lottie. And they actually had a little bit of a foursome secret alliance going on there.
Mm.
But that makes sense from Lottie's perspective, right? If you were trying to amass numbers to do something, maybe not the best advice to do it against one of your closest allies, but to go to someone who you seemingly did have a relationship with prior is the move to make.
Yeah. And it's interesting how almost instantly this three has sort of fractured. And it's really that doesn't usually happen instantaneously after a vote where this has happened and you go, okay. And then that conversation was so telling with Aisha and Cameron, where she was like, she got in my head and she nearly changed everything. Those two, you can see this is why it's so important. That's why having genuine relationships with people is that deeper personal relationship is always going to win out if it's just a strategic relationship, because these two are talking like she's just trying to manipulate us. But the great thing about Lottie is she clocks that. Like she's the other side of the Harry coin. I really do think that. And she's so aware of those conversations happening, and she knows she has to lock in Simon. So she spends a lot of time just rebuilding Simon, reconfirming with him, like, yep, it's you and me. This is really happening, to try and rebuild that relationship. But I feel bad because Harry, I love that as a foursome. Like Harry and Paula, Lottie and Simon. I think that would have been an awesome sort of secret alliance across the board.
And you talk about an alliance that like works together but does not trust each other. Like the guns would have been pointed across the way throughout their entire time working together.
I feel like we really missed sort of a beat there. It would have been so much fun. But Lottie's smart enough to know when the winds are changing. I'm just so surprised that people aren't putting in more of an effort with Loz and Rich and Lyndall. Like Lyndall is looking for a home. And it's so ironic.
Is she though, Meaden? Is she? Because I feel like you offer her home and she's like, I don't like the basement. I'm going to move on to another home. It's like, there might not be another home guaranteed, Lyndall.
Well, the irony of she goes to Paula to really go, because she felt that she had a little something with Paula. Ironically, Paula had already put the votes on Lyndall and it was already like going in that direction. So they had this crazy conversation where I feel like Lyndall was like, what should we do, Paula? Like, let's talk this through. And Paula being like, like it is what it is, and sort of rebuffing her and her not realizing what else can happen. But the fact that really hurt Harry was that he had just voted for Lyndall in the tribal before, when Paula went home, so he couldn't rebuild anything with Lyndall. And now she's still out there. She's got an idol, and Loz knows about it as well, which is crazy that they're not like a super tight like pairing, and that you can use them as a double vote. I just don't get where Lyndall, Loz, and Richard are in this bigger group, and how no one has like locked them into this situation. And why isn't Lottie? Yeah, why isn't Lottie doing that? Like, I know she's got Simon, but why isn't she at this point, like, locking in Jackson? I feel like Jackson's moving towards the Cameron and Aisha sort of side of things. So I don't know. Lottie still has the ability to whip the votes. We can see it nearly happened. She nearly got it across the line, which was not a good read for the tribe. I think getting rid of Harry now is good for the rest of those guys. But she nearly did it. She nearly saved him. If he wasn't, do you feel like he would have gone home if it wasn't for the blackmail, the
Yeah, it's a good question.
extortion, if it will?
And obviously, this is something that we'll talk with Harry about
Mm,
very soon. My take, just by watching the edit, is that when the Flint Gambit comes out, I didn't see any sort of like manic whispering. Did you? That
no.
maybe implies to me that the plan was always Harry,
He's-
and so it just
yeah.
didn't move the unless these people are expert level, contingency planners on contingency planners. That makes me assume that the plan was always Harry,
Harry. Yeah.
and this just, like, maybe mucked things up a little bit until Jackson revealed that he had the flint and gave it back, and then that subsequently then maybe makes Harry's gambit, yes, while incredibly risky, like, maybe a little bit more understandable as if he really picked up that the die was so cast against
Yeah.
him, then spin the roulette wheel a little bit. I know I'm mixing casino metaphors here. That's my read on it. Again, he might
Yeah.
provide something different or very similar, but just through those sort of context clues, like the tribal council didn't turn live
No,
when
no,
the
that's so true
Flint
when this came out.
conundrum
Yeah.
was presented. If it
Yeah.
did, that would have implied like, okay, things are
Things
really
are
shaken
happening.
up. The fact that it wasn't really goes to show that I think Harry was DOA.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, unfortunately, and I think Harry, he's so self-aware. These last couple of episodes, I feel like he just didn't have the tools. He just didn't have
Mhm.
the tools to pull things together and to do things. And he could see it. And like Simon said, he's like, I've never seen Harry like this before. I've never seen him sort of not confident and just sort of going like, oh God, yeah, I think it's me sort of thing, which is really unfortunate. And for him to come up with this Flint gambit was pretty amazing. I would never have pulled that out of my bag of tricks. I wouldn't have even occurred to me, but it was wild. And then Jackson, I feel like he has gone a long way to ingratiate himself into the team with that little speech. And you saw a little bit this episode with him in the hammock with the guys and being a bit more comfortable with them. So I think he's actually done a really good job of maybe going that 180 and getting back on board with everyone to the point that maybe they do turn on Lottie next and be like, yeah, she's really threatening, and Jackson would be on board for that. But we just, yeah, it's interesting. I want to know more about where Rich is, because I feel like Rich is a really
Where's this? And
interesting
this guy
character.
has like a nickname, cash flow. Where did that come from? This is
Yeah,
a man of mystery.
yeah, this is what I mean. And I feel like I'm not getting a read on who he's actually really connected with and where his loyalties really lie and whether he is playing the field. It's just interesting. I don't know. I don't know why some of these people aren't getting more confessionals to explain their sort of side of things. But he's interesting as well, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I am intrigued to find out had Bounty gone to an immediate tribal council yet again, what
Yes.
things would have looked like. Would Lottie and Asha have split apart right there, right then? Would they have instead tried to make things a little bit more unanimous against maybe a Jackson, where it's like, hey,
Mm,
buddy, thanks for giving back the Flint, but you're still on
but
the outs? I mean,
yeah.
Simon's also in a really interesting position in this version of the tribe because you have this conversation between Cameron and Asha where, like, preseason they were saying get Simon out, and then they end up
Yes.
they finish it with like, yeah, but that's not the case anymore. And maybe it's the defenestration of like, well, Harry's not here, so Simon doesn't have that connection, even though they didn't necessarily know how close they were
Mm,
until Simon was weeping upon saying goodbye to Harry. But like, it seems like he's in good with both sides of this possible schism that might occur. Eden, you're a pop culture connoisseur, so I have to ask your beat on this. Do you think Cameron has ever seen the movie Mean Girls?
no, I actually don't.
He was absolutely going along to get along when Asha was
Yeah,
making the Bird
yes.
Book reference. He's like, yeah, I definitely saw that. I definitely
Yeah.
understand the reference.
Yeah. Like I lit the book on fire. It was hilarious. Like, yeah, that's what I think.
That is so interesting, though. I'm surprised they kept in the get Simon out preseason notebook thing that Cameron mentioned, because and Tez mentioned this a little
Yeah.
bit as well, that like he's posting on social media the fact that like he heard scuttlebutt of Harry being on, so he did a deep dive into who he was and his entire
Mhm.
game. Yeah, I feel like the show would not necessarily have showcased. Yeah, there was rumors that these people were going to be on, so they did their research on it. But it does seem like some of these people really incorporated the presences of these people into their preseason plans.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I feel like this season as well, the players they've been let loose a little bit more on your socials, on your like all over the place. There is a lot of things sort of coming out, which I know in Titans versus Rebels we were everything got locked down and we couldn't talk. And we had to get stuff approved to post and all this sort of stuff. But these guys, there are some really interesting things coming about. And that's like good on them. They've heard about like maybe Harry's playing. Okay, I'm going to do a deep dive on Harry. We know Simon Simon put together some online games because he wanted to sow some seeds and get back into it and figure out how some people play. So there's this game within a game. We talk about pre-gaming and things like that, but that for a newbie to be able to pre-game is pretty amazing. And it's just weird this time around. They seem a lot more. They've just let them sort of loose. If it was like it's quite weird. I think Simon is in a good spot. I think Simon came in with a plan of I'm just going to be at camp. I'm just going to work really hard. I'm not going to strategize. I'm not going to be seen as this other person. And people are going to bring me in and they're going to talk to me. And Simon's always wanted to be in on the know. There's his whole story is always he's left out. His plans never come through. Things fall away. So just having someone that's like, this is the plan and it being executed and him feeling like he's engaged in it. But ultimately, he hasn't come across as sneaky. He has just sat by the fire. He's waited for people to come to him, which is really hard. I feel like he should have done a little bit more to protect Harry. I feel like Harry and him had an unspoken... And, mate, we never got Chekhov's rice.
We
never got the moment where it was the rice is undercooked. The rice is terrible. I was hanging for that. And it never came to fruition. So I was really devastated about that. But I think Simon needs to work a little bit harder on someone like Rich and Jackson. Get these people like, let's talk to Lyndall. That's what he needs to do and have a few more options like Mark. Mark's got options out there. Whereas Simon's gone out of his way to not come across as having conversations, but I think it might bite him in the butt come a swap. Because really, at this point, it's just Lottie that really has his back. And that's not enough in a swap if they're not together.
Well, you mentioned that. Before we get to the Chizzy, I want to do a little bit of forecasting here. And look, the entire purpose of a swap is that anything and everything can happen. But let's just say for the sake of this experiment that I know the numbers are uneven, but if we get like even numbers on a swap tribe here, if it's, again, it'll be 9 and 9, so that won't make any sense. But if it's like, if it doesn't seem like it's just going to be an easy majority picking off the minority, who do you think, based on the dynamics we've seen, would be most in danger in any sort of given swap situation?
Yeah, I think sometimes in a swap, the normal thinking in the show is that you just go, okay, this is a new dynamic. We don't really know what's happening. So if it's pretty even and there's a lot of different things happening, then you just go for a consensus vote of who's annoying. So it's like a Don. So Don just goes home at that point. Oh, look, yeah, he's talking back. He's saying all this stuff. Let's just get rid of Don because we haven't had a chance to form a relationship between ourselves. If it's a majority of one side and a minority of someone else, then yeah, of course we can pick off the minority. But it is an opportunity, and we did it in our season after the swap. The first thing I was like, okay, no one is expecting a move right now. Everyone is expecting to consolidate power and move forward. And that is why I wanted to get rid of Viola at that point, because people were not going to see it coming. People were going to be sitting on their hands going, let's swap. Let's just do the easy vote. Let's just get rid of someone that makes sense. But there is the argument that if you want to blindside someone and that Mark and Caleb are on the same tribe, and that, like, say if it is Mark, Caleb, Faith and Keely, that's the time to sort of do it. It's like, okay, let's get Caleb now. We'll get everyone else involved and get rid of him. So that's I think Don's in trouble for that reason. I think because there is a plan in place to possibly get rid of Kalen that's been floated, he could be in trouble. On the other side of things, Lyndall seems to be always like on the outs.
And she doesn't have an idol anymore.
Oh, yeah, that's true because it's gone. Yeah. So that she could be a real worry. Jackson, I think maybe people might be leaning on, depending on what the group dynamic is, you might need his strength for a couple more of these challenges to sort of get across the line. So I think he's okay. I don't think anyone's going to immediately come after Lottie. I think she can talk her way out of it. So yeah, I think it's probably like a Don or a Caleb. Maybe a Blanche is another. Again, it's hard to tell when you haven't seen someone existing in the show at all, and whether she gets on with anyone. I think Blanche and Tez have quite a good relationship, from what I understand. But is Tez going to stick his neck out to save Blanche in that situation? Probably not. But that's my gut feeling where things are going.
Something that I am interested in is Laws coming back with the information about Baron. Because the interesting thing about
Yes.
dynamics right at a swap is like you could only go with what you see in front of you and what you have been told. And Laws does tell Bounty, she gives the intel as to what she got, and she said that Mark is running everything.
Yes.
So even though Mark escaped here with all of his allies intact, even if his quote unquote secret ally, his unrequited secret ally, went home here, we may not be completely out of the woods yet with that storyline if they don't gun for Merc proper.
Yeah, and look, it's a really good point. And they did make a point of showing that conversation with Loz. They made a point of her saying, Mark's running things. That's the understanding of the tribe. But I think your Lotties and your Simons and your Brooks, there's enough people there, your Faiths and your Keelys. That's almost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 people that it's in their best interest to keep Mark as a shield at this point, especially in a swap. Keep a focus on him, but don't take the shot yet. And it's nearly half the tribe incentivized not to get rid of Mark at this point. So I think he's okay for a couple more votes. But you're right. They're definitely making a point of saying Mark is running things. Mark is the big boss man. If you want to really disrupt things, you take him out.
All right, well, let's see how much the big boss man's role will be reflected in this episode's Chizzy. Take it away, Jacob Seger-Weinstein and MC Cullah.
2, 3. 1, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's getting kind of chizzy. 3, 2, 1. 1.
Feels kind of weird to play that with me in the hosting chair. It feels like trying on someone else's jacket, full Angelina style, or I guess Simon style with Daniel. So it fits nicely, hopefully. All right, Eden, I will let you go first here because, again, this was a weird episode from an edit perspective. So I'm intrigued to find out if the Chizzy points bore out that way as well.
Yeah, it was actually pretty hard to break it down, but there's a couple of things you got to take into account. So one, Faith and Keely, the plan didn't happen that they wanted to happen. So they put something in motion and they backed out. And that, when I look at an episode like that, who went home, who wanted them to go home, did it plan out how they wanted it to go? And these guys, it would be hard for me to give them some points because it didn't pan out how they wanted to. I think the person that actually sort of had the biggest impact on the episode in terms of sort of steadying the ship, because Mark was left, that was the other thing, Mark was left out of those conversations.
Right, he just sort of caught a vibe, but that was pretty much it.
Yeah, but at the same time, he did catch a vibe, and the person that went home did go home, and he did manage to get the guys on board to do that. But I think it was actually Brooke. I think it was Brooke who pushed back, who kept Caleb because she had a relationship with him, kept Mark on side, kept her relationship with the girls. And so for that, I'm just going straight up 3 points for Brooke. I feel like she played her idol. She's got rid of that. She's in a good position. And no one is really targeting her at this point. And Mark's got the big focus. So I think she's probably got the points for me this time. 2 points. Again, the person that went home, I'm going to give it to my boy Mark. I feel like Mark did enough. He got the wind. He got Tez giving him half information. He had Don lined up as the split vote and stuff like that. So I do feel like Mark needs some points. He got what he wanted. Johnson's out the door, and he maintained his relationship with everyone. And then last, I'm going to flip over to the other tribe. I think Lottie gets a point here for pulling in Simon, for consolidating that, for getting her little survivor radar going with Cameron and Aisha, and knowing that there's something there and knowing that she has to do something. And ultimately, I feel like this episode she's trying to consolidate. And that's my points. That's where my head's at.
Well, listen, I hate to be straightforward in my own points, but it feels applicable for this episode. No, I had the exact same 3 in the exact same order. Yeah, because I know we are going to get flamed in the comment section if they look at these charts and be like, how did Brooke get 3 points? But again, now knowing the context that this was sort of like a use it or lose it scenario, I feel like, it doesn't seem as egregious of a mistake. And I think, there is a reason to keep an idol around as a possible, tool later on. But it doesn't necessarily feel like that much of a sticking point to like not give her the 3 points, considering that unlike Mark, she was brought into the vote and seemingly served at least some role in not getting that vote over the line. You could argue that her playing the idol was a way to sort of force that hand as well. And yeah, again, this was a weird episode because Faith and Keely were doing the most,
Yeah.
but A, it didn't work out, and B, I kind of didn't agree with a lot of what they were doing. Made for some very fun intrigue. Thank you for helping fill the last 20 minutes of the episode, but I feel like some wrong choices were made there. So they have to kind of get settled into honorable mention. Mark gets the 2 from me because I think another reason why this doesn't happen is because of like the relationships that people have with Mark. And I think specifically this idea of, well, I could do this, but I don't want to ruin anything with Mark. That's kind of like, I would imagine at least part of Johnson's calculus does help keep his, alliances intact. And I do think he is in one of the best positions going into this swap, considering I think he has a lot of outs depending on how things shake out. So this less so serves as like what he did in this episode and more so as like a culmination of what he set up between votes to make sure that he was sort of covered on all sides. Like even if Johnson wasn't coming for him, he was coming for one of his people. And I'll give a point to Lottie because she might be in a little bit of danger if Asha and Cameron wanted to strike. But the fact that she was cognizant of that and also making moves for it, on the one hand, like I feel like 9 times out of 10, it's like, what are you doing? You're being way too paranoid. They want to work with you. But she had the correct read. For some reason, I feel like every season nowadays, we are getting sort of like this enigmatic unicorn of a player of, I don't know how you're getting away with these things. I don't know how you're doing what you're doing. It was a George. It was a Kirby, it was an AJ and a Miles to a certain extent. Now it's Lottie. And I mean, I just give her so much kudos for being able to assess that position and already start mobilizing things. Yes, you could talk about swaps until you're blue in the face or purple, but you also want to shore up as many contingencies as possible, sort of like what Mark was doing. So that's the 3-2-1 as we end out week 2 here.
It's crazy. It's like we're just so in sync, Mike. Already, this is amazing.
Unlike Asha and Lottie, we're not separating anytime soon. So I'm happy to be in lockstep with you, Eden. Well, any other things that you want to talk about with either this week, this episode, Survivor AU in general? As again, we are going to be dropping our buffs and moving into the next phase of the season.
I want to know, Mike, did you catch the Seinfeld reference in this episode?
Oh, I mean, listen, this is going to be tough compared to a guy who wore a Seinfeld reference on his shirt in the game. I don't think I did upon first glance. What was the reference?
So this is the reference. So in the challenge where they're shooting each other off the beam, the reward is the nachos, obviously.
Yeah, fully loaded, yeah.
And fully loaded, not all the fixins, but fully loaded. And David, did you notice that David said salsa instead of salsa?
Oh, I did not notice that. That's a great name for a boy.
Or a girl. I think it'd be impossible for a Spanish person to order salsa, not get salsa. It's just, I popped for that as well. I'm like, oh, this is so good.
I will also say, speaking of pop, there was a really fun moment and a really like low-key trolly moment from Cameron, right? Where you have this challenge, and I was a little unclear on the rules of like, okay, is it do you have to fall off the beam, or like if you get hit, can you still stay on? But it seemed like once you were touched, you were out. And I love the fact that it seemed like Bounty, like just because, Ben's a machine, Mark was incredible on the slingshot, but for Cameron to distract Ben to the point where like Canadian curling style, he like extends his hand and then Simon just nicks him on it and wins the challenge. Such a fun move. These challenges are just like, I like absolutely killing it. I said this the last time I was on, but just like, I am so astounded. I don't know if it's this season in particular or just like a refresh reminder on an annual basis of how creative the challenges can be in Australian Survivor. But even just something like that, I absolutely loved.
2 things with the challenges. One is that, they're creative. They're finding new ways. Like Simon climbing up the scaffolding. One, awesome. So much fun. The other thing is that we forget no one is throwing challenges at this point. Like that sort of sucked a lot of the energy out of BVB2. There was a lot of challenge throwing, a lot of discussion like this. Some of these challenges have been so close. They've been right down to the wire. The one where they were snaking the ball up, there was a wide shot and they literally both started the ball at the same time. It was not editing trickery. It was
it came down probably a matter of like 4 feet between Baron winning and losing.
Yeah, it's crazy. The other thing that I think they've really nutted out is that you can have physical challenges, but just have it in knee-high water. Like, just do it in the water. I feel like we do a lot of those challenges where you either fall into water or you're doing the actual grappling in water. And I think that's a cool way to just still incorporate that physicality without having people's shoulders be dislocated and things being snapped and doing them on the beach and stuff like that. So I think that they've figured that out, and that's really fun as well, I think.
Well, we are getting into deeper waters as we paddle our way through the Survivor AU redemption pool. As next week, we are moving into episode 7 to see what these new tribes will look like. Will any of these previous tensions and plans bear out depending on how the tribes are split? Just as a quick reminder as to what this podcast is going to look like for the foreseeable future. So I will still be doing the first and second episodes of the week with Puya, with Chappelle, but then the third episode of every week for now until they go down to 2, I will be here with a guest. But Eden, there's big shoes to fill because you absolutely killed it here, man. Thank you for being the first guest on a post-Shannon version of the Australian Survivor recaps. This was so much fun to do, to get your thoughts, especially given, obviously, your very intimate knowledge of how Mark operates. It was really cool to get your perspective as to everything that he's doing, all the possibilities we threw out as to, like, what actually happened, what could have happened on that barren beach. I am so happy that we got the chance to connect here.
Oh, my friend, it is my pleasure to help support, like, not only supporting Shannon while she's away, but giving this opportunity to sit down here and talk with you, Mike Bloom. Big fan. This has been absolutely fantastic for me, my friend. And hopefully we will talk again soon at some stage. But I'm so glad you're enjoying the season. And all the best for being my captain for the foreseeable future.
Well, we'll see if that ship goes down sooner rather than later. But if you want to check out a different ship in the fleet here in terms of Survivor AU coverage, of course, if you want to get more of Eden's fantastic opinions about Australian Survivor, you'll become a Survivor podcaster in your own right, my friend, for both the US and Australian version. So how can people check out everything you're doing?
Yes, just check us out, Survivor Debrief. We're doing both seasons with my brother, Josh Porter. I've got kids, things are happening, but it's the Survivor season. Like, it's time to get on board. So there's a lot of podcasting. Just check us out at Survivor Debrief on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast. That would give us a like and subscribe. Come on. Help a poor Titan out.
Yes.
That's been really fun. Yeah, exactly. But that's been really fun to for doing both. Obviously, season 50s, it's such a landmark season as well, and that's been really fun. But diving into actually podcasting about someone that you know quite intimately with Mark has been really, really fun as well, which is great.
Well, we've talked a lot about the coulda, woulda, shouldas, the possible psychology of some of the players in this week. And you'll be getting some answers very soon, as I have also officially taken over the exit interview junket. So coming up soon will be my interviews with Paula, with Harry, with Johnson. At the point we're recording this, I've only talked with Paula so far, and she's already provided a lot of really interesting perspectives into what was happening on Bounty. I imagine Harry is going to completely color in that picture and then some. And then Johnson as well. Again, really intrigued to get all of his mindset, considering how much the edit was really painting a narrative of, like, this guy is about as smooth as sandpaper. I'm going to be very interested to see his own perspective on the position he was in compared to maybe what that was presented. So do not miss out on it, as well as any of our Australian Survivor coverage. We know globalsurvivor.com. That's going to do it for this episode of our Australian Survivor redemption coverage. Eden, again, thank you so much for coming on and offering your always valuable insights. Hopefully I've done an okay job settling into this new role. Please, I will again plug for everybody. Go to @Shannon Gates, look at those adorable baby pictures, and subsequently send her the well wishes and the support. I know it would mean the absolute world to her. So we'll be back next week. I'm not sure if it's Sunday or Monday this week again.
It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday again.
Okay, so this might be a new norm for Channel 10.
I think it changes back. I think it's just because we've got a long weekend coming up, and there's been some soccer and footy stuff. But I think they will eventually go back to Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
All right. Well, for now, they're taking the Sunday off. Daniel would be very proud of that. But for now, we'll be back on Monday talking about episode 7 and the swap and see what exactly happens in, yet again, I will say, a new phase of Australian Survivor. Thank you all again so much for listening. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.